Hey everybody, welcome to episode 128 of the AskDap show, where I answer your Volkswagen and Audi questions. On this episode, we talk about, do 2014 TSI engines still have the same common problems, failures of an ECU, and installing an IS38 in a Mark 7. Is it safe?
Flopkin via YouTube asks, how safe is this? If I were to throw a Golf R turbo on my GTI, will my GTI break?
Okay, so this was asked about the IS38 on a Mark 7. So IS38s on Mark 7s, very common upgrade, going to be really the best bang for your buck if you're looking to upgrade a Mark 7 GTI to get more power. Would be, for software, then things like intercooler, downpipe, and then the next level up from there would be an IS38. Aside from that, you really need to go big turbo before you're going to get real power. It's pretty well established within Mark 7s that you're not going to have any issues until you get above kind of that 400-ish, 450 to worry about any type of internals and engine work. So if you're not going above IS38, you should not worry about anything in terms of engine performance overall. Now, obviously that doesn't guarantee nothing could ever happen, but it is something that is solidly reliable, and because you're using factory parts or factory parts for one vehicle to another one, you're going to get a very similar feel, a factory-esque type feel, as opposed to a lot of times if you go big turbo and you get big power, you start to get much later spool, and it kind of messes with drivability. So yeah, I say IS38 all day for anybody looking for that kind of power.
Oscar via Facebook asked, I wanted to ask specifically about the 2014 GTI since it's the last year of the Mark 6. Were most of these issues fixed by this point so I wouldn't have to worry about them on the 2014? Or is this the year still plagued by tensioner failure, water pump failure, and intake manifold replacement?
Okay, so we've covered a lot of stuff about Mark 6 over the past. Timing chain tensioner failures, intake manifold failures, and water pump failures are probably the two most prevalent issues. I'll link to the article that we have that talks about common failures on TSI engines in the description, where you can check that out. We actually have a TSI engine here that we're going to be doing some stuff on for a later video. But would a 2014 have the most current version so you wouldn't have to worry about those failures? Kind of. So on a 2014 car, I would suspect that the tensioner is probably going to be the updated one. So on a tensioner, you are likely going to be in good shape. You won't have to worry about replacing that. 2012 is a split year as far as everything I've always seen. So anything 2013 and later is going to have the most current revision of the tensioner. Now that doesn't mean your chains are good. So we did have that video. We talked about how to check for timing chain stretch, which I'll link to again in the description where you can find that information. In terms of water pumps and intake manifolds, I can say you almost certainly do not have the most current version, because the most current revision, and it's so hard for me to remember timelines of when the new stuff came out, but if you maybe guess, the most current version of the manifold and water pump were probably somewhere in the year and a half ago range, and definitely were not something on a lot of production cars coming out of the factory. So those cars your car almost certainly has the old version. Water pumps, I've seen, we've had cars in the shop that have had a original water pump with over 100,000 miles on it, and that's actually not leaking in any issue. So most times water pump failures come as a result of oil leaks, and so if your cam cradle leaks, it will cause the water pump to fail prematurely. If you don't have it, they can still fail anyway, but they're certainly expedited by having an oil leak in the first place. So you will likely have to look at a water pump and an intake manifold at some point. My advice is, because it's so much easier to replace if you're doing it yourself, or really even if a shop is doing it for you, when you have that manifold off, the water pump is right in front of you, and it's super easy to see and get to, whereas a lot of shops do it blind otherwise, kind of just sticking their arms underneath. I would advise replace them both while you're in there if you're doing a manifold. That way you're saving the money on future labor, or if you're doing it yourself, it's certainly way easier to do in that situation. So hopefully that helps.
M39 Brown via YouTube asks, I have a 2011 Mark 6 GTI and I'm having an electrical issue with the car not starting. I have a new battery that's only 6 months old and I recharged it the day it didn't start. My car is in-tuned by Stratified and I called VW and they say my immobilizer could be the problem, but a VW specialist told me my car's ECU is bricked because the fans are running high for no reason. What route should I go with to solve this problem?
Okay, so I don't know exactly what's going on in this circumstance because there's obviously a lot of variables that could be at play here. I understand why the dealer told you that, and that's actually pretty good advice. There certainly can be a bricked ECU, because part of the process is if we were to flash a car like at the shop here, if we flash a car, as soon as the ECU loses communication with the vehicle, the fan's go on full high, assuming the key is on. And that's some sort of fail-safe that exists. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be some kind of overheat protection intentionally, or if it's just something that exists out there. So because of that, it makes me suspect that it probably is a bad ECU, but that's not a definitive diagnosis of the vehicle, because usually ECMs are not super common to go bad. So if it was directly related to when you were trying to get a tune, then I would say you should look at what's going on with the tune. If you had been driving for some time and then that happened, you either probably have a communication problem with the ECU, which could be check fuses and relays and that type of stuff. And if all that stuff checks to be good, then you can say it's very likely it could be an ECU. And actually, he did ask after I responded saying that we were going to answer this question. He asked if he should just replace the ECU and not to try to save money on diagnostic. Kind of hard to say. I would say no, only because if it ends up being a fuse or a relay that popped somewhere along the way, you're really going to regret replacing a $1,000, $1,200 ECU when you later find out that it's actually a fuse that was blown after you spent that money. So I understand why you might want to try to just automatically do that and save the money if you're going to have to replace the ECU, but the problem is I can't definitively say. Whoever's working on the cars are the ones who probably should go through the diagnostic process and determine what's going on. And again, most places you're going to have to pay for that, and so I would suggest go through the diagnostic first, then determine if you need to replace the ECU.
Hog Salad via Facebook asked, I just installed a blow-off valve this past weekend on my Mark 7, and I used your video as well as provided instructions from Ford, and I'm certain it is installed correctly with no leaks. I'm getting a check engine light code, turbocharger, bypass valve, control circuit. The only thing I noticed that didn't look right was the connector on the adapter that connects to the solenoid. One of the pins is released, and it looks like it may not be making contact. Do you think this may be the problem? I've cleared this code multiple times, and it comes back instantly after clearing it, and even without driving the car.
Okay, so this was a Mark 7 installed a forged blow-off valve or diverter valve, whichever one. That's what the comment was on our blow-off valve video. And you're having that fault code P3300, and what that's referring to is actually the electrical control circuit of the diverter valve. So I think you're on the right track with you saying that pin is recessed and looks like it's not getting contact. I can guarantee you that if it's not making contact, and you have to determine if that's the case, that's going to cause an issue where you're going to get a fault. And the fact that it comes back immediately makes me even more confident that that's what the issue is, because a fault code, unless something actually happens, is not going to throw a fault immediately. So it's essentially thinking that nothing is plugged in is what's going on. So I would say it's very likely that that's related. It could be either an issue with that, either maybe one of the pins isn't locked in all the way or something of that nature. I would take a look at that and see if that's the case. If you can get it to lock in further, then that would be my advice to make sure. If not, then you may need to get a replacement adapter, but I don't know if that is going to solve that specific problem. You'll have to look at your individual case and figure out what's going on. So hopefully that helps you and answers the question and gets you resolved for fixing that. But I would say it's definitely going to be electrical related to that. And if you're saying that that's a contact issue, it's likely to be the case. Thank you so much for watching episode 128 of the AskDap show, where I answer your Volkswagen and Audi questions. If you have any questions or comments about the questions answered in this show, be sure to leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more like it.